and outward. That is the way that leads to life. And not life just for us, but for those beyond us. As the picture on the front cover of your bulletin shows. That is a version of the tree of life. And you can see in that tree, beyond that tree, there is life. Birds, butterflies. I even put in a squirrel, if you can find it. From its beginning, the tree of life, it springs forth from the forest floor, upward and outward, unfurling its first fragile leaf, and then another leaf and another, each of them growing upward and outward. And as they do, in time, a pattern of change, of newness occurs. Stems become branches. Branches become the trunk of the tree. Over and over, upward and outward in new directions, this life occurs. That is, if the tree is healthy. But if a tree is not healthy, the very first sign, the very first step of a tree's demise and its death comes when it loses its ability to grow. When it loses its ability to create newness, to move upward and onward. The same is true of us. The same is true of the church. The same is true of the life of any community, any institution. In our scripture reading this morning, as Barbara pointed out, God plants two very special trees in the Garden of Eden. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Like Adam and Eve, so very often we gravitate toward the tree of knowledge rather than the tree of life. We crave knowledge and information. We always want to know why. We want an explanation. We long for certainty in our life. And after all, as Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. The power to control. Which is why it is especially tempting when things in our lives or in our world feel out of control, that we lean towards the tree of knowledge for its hope of power and control, especially when we feel insecure, especially when we feel threatened, especially when we fear for our very lives. But as Adam and Eve discovered, choices motivated out of these longings and fears, choices in pursuit of power and control, the desire to be like God, as Adam and Eve hoped to be. It only creates suffering and death. It only serves to separate us from God. If only they had eaten instead of the tree of life. If only we would do the same. But the tree of life, let's face it, is just not as alluring as the tree of knowledge. Its fruit does not look as sweet. The tree of life, always stretching out in new directions, in new unpredictable ways. Such life cannot be controlled. Nor does it offer certainty, because we don't know where it will go. It's unpredictable. Rather, new life makes us vulnerable. For anything new is always fragile, always unknown. Likewise, what is new is seldom comfortable. It feels instead a little unsettled, a little strange. And yet, that is the tree of which God says, eat. That is the way. But to do that, to eat of the fruit of the tree of life, it requires courage and faith, a flexibility of mind and of spirit, and trust deep in our hearts. To eat of the fruit also is something that does not just happen all alone. For to produce the fruit, the tree of life, it needs all sorts of help. It needs each year's new leaves. It needs the sun. It needs the rain. It needs the soil. It needs the nutrients within the soil, which come from the prior year's leaves, that once were the new growth themselves, but now it is not. But it is the new soil. It takes a whole community of support to maintain the life of the tree of life. And the same is true of us. It takes a community. For in life, if we are ever to have the courage to choose this path, to eat of the tree of life, if we are to take upon ourselves and survive these moments of vulnerability and insecurity and uncertainty, and reach finally the joy and taste of the marvel of the miraculous new life beyond our wildest imaginations, we will need by our side a loving, supportive, and faithful community. For only so surrounded will we have the courage to make those choices. The choices made by Jesus. For Jesus is always true to the roots of his faith, and yet Jesus is always doing something new, something unconventional. It is exactly that which keeps getting him in trouble. He always is finding new dimensions to, new directions for, and new expressions of God's love. Never is Jesus too shy to put new wine in new wineskins. And when his life was most difficult, when it would have been so easy to take that same road that Adam and Eve took, to claim an equality with God, and so make his life a little easier. Instead, Jesus humbled himself. Even then, he became a servant, not the servant. He chose to be vulnerable even to the point of death. And that choice, difficult and as uncomfortable as it was, it is the choice that led to new life, to an even more radical expression of God's love and Easter's surprising resurrection. But following Jesus' example and his choices is not easy. It will require much practice on our part. That's the bad news. The good news is that's what Lent is all about. We have time to practice, and we will indeed need it. But I want to suggest this Lent, we need to tweak our usual Lenten practice. Because here's what we usually do. Usually for Lent, we take on a practice not of true change, but rather we take on a practice of contorting ourselves for 40 days. For 40 days, we contort into a better, healthier person. We give up cheeseburgers or chocolate or some other bad habits. But we don't really mean to change. For when Easter comes, we're off the hook. We go back to our old ways. All the cheeseburgers and chocolate we want. But that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Easter is the day of all days that we are supposed to embrace new life, not revert back to the life before. We have it backwards. So that does not happen this year. Instead of our usual Lenten practice, try this. Instead of giving something up, let us practice doing something new. Doing something new. Each day, let us practice venturing upward and outward into the unknown. Do something. Try something. Eat something. Meet someone new. Something, someone that we do not yet know. And let that newness, its unease, its strangeness, wash over us until we finally get used to it. Until we can embrace that feeling and make it a companion of ours in our lives. For that is what it feels like to truly follow God. Because God, Scripture tells us, is always doing a new thing. Is always creating a new covenant. First with Adam and Eve, then Noah, then Abraham, then Jacob, then Moses, and so on, and so on, and so on. There's always a new covenant. God always offers new life, a new day, a new way. But only those who are practiced in the way of newness, only those who can bear it and stand it and embrace it, will ever be able to receive it. This Easter, may we be there. Amen.